friend Jeremiah Okello, and what we want to do was do a part two of our East Africa outsourcing and customer experience podcast. We talked a bit high level on the customer experience and what you would expect. Today, we're going to get a little bit more detail of the environment of outsourcing, the ecosystem of outsourcing in East Africa, and what you would expect in terms of customer experience if you source your work there. It's a little bit more in depth than what we covered last week. So with that said, how are you doing today, Jeremiah?
I'm pretty good, Russ. How are you?
I'm doing good. So hopefully you can all hear me today. I'm trying to upgrade my tech for these podcasts. I've got a long ways to go, though, as you can see. So anyway, we had a lot of good feedback from the last time we talked, and some people had some more further questions. So why don't you just give me a quick overview first, high level, of the state of play for outsourcing in East Africa? Where do you see it right now? What are some of the strengths, some of the weaknesses of outsourcing? And then we can get into the actual countries from there.
Great. Once again, Russ, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I hope that we are adding value to our listeners and viewers, and hoping that we're giving them more insights, than what they already have as far as the topic is concerned. Now, the East African outsourcing landscape has been really defined as an emerging vendor destination for quite some time. Actually, for the last 10 plus years, which technically it should have been getting past that. So generally, the whole region is an emerging market, and this is something that keeps getting better with time. For example, if you look at, first of all, the types of vendors that we used to have in this region. We used to have tier 3 vendors with 30, 50 seats, capacity, providing services to maybe one or two clients, and then maybe working one specific or vertical or domain. Now we have a trend where we have tier 2 vendors in the region with capacity of 200, 300, 500 seats, servicing more than one vertical and one domain, with footprint across more than just one buyer destination. So you could have one that has clients in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, and regional clients as well. And in terms of technical infrastructure, I mean, Africa generally, and really specifically East African region, technology-wise, we've made leaps and bounds, and right now we have some of the best, technology, infrastructure as compared to anywhere else in the world. So that is what is making us growing from an emerging destination into a mature destination. Now, another very, very important factor that has contributed to this growth from an emerging to a mature destination is the skill levels of the labor workforce within this region. Way back when we started this, and you remember this, we were struggling to get, you remember when you were running that facility in Nairobi, you and I, we were struggling to get, lead generation agents, and we had to start with them from scratch. Now, now the labor environment is in a situation where, I mean, any type of service that any buyer would be looking for, you're sure to get qualified, certified, and productive agents and supervisors and team leaders and project managers and account managers, the whole level of staff requirements for an outsourcing facility. So these are some of the things that is making us an appealing destination. Sure. But what we need to do, the East African region needs to do as a region or as a community, is sort of deliberately decide and consolidate our services and market ourselves as a single market. Right now, Kenya is running its show, Uganda is running its show, Rwanda is running its show, and all of these efforts are all disjointed, and that leads to low rates of success in our outsourcing efforts. Not that failures are we are experiencing a lot of failure, but not that we are failing. It's just that the level of success we are attaining right now, we should be attaining a lot more than that. So what the three East African major outsourcing players, governments needs to do is find a way that we consolidate ourselves and then position East Africa as a single market as opposed to as three segmented markets.
So I'm hearing you lobby to the governments of Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya to band together to create some sort of contact center association for East Africa. Maybe you could lead the charge on that. I have a question for you. You made me think of something when you talked about the education and the leaps and bounds of capacity in terms of education within Nairobi itself, and how the education is so good, and how there's so many good young people coming out into the workforce. But is there a brain drain? Is there an issue with people in Nairobi going elsewhere with their skills because they can't find the jobs in Nairobi?
Well, yeah, that is very true. Brain drain is a factor and actually a threat to the development of the labor force in this region. However, when I talk about usually say maybe 7 years ago, we used to say we have quality levels of education and all. However, the question that started hitting everybody hard was, well, yes, they are well educated, but how many of them are outsourcing ready? Do they have the skills and the capacity and the capabilities to work in an outsourcing environment? So at those years back, 5, 7, 10 years ago, the answer to that was no. However, we've seen an upsurge in the uptake of outsourcing specific types of skill development programs. Talk about certifications. We've had very, very high levels of BPO or outsourcing specific accreditation, certification, and training bodies come into the region. So what happens is that instead of just saying we have a highly educated youth population, we talk about now we have outsourcing and BPO ready youth population. Now, in that context, brain drain doesn't really become a major factor as such, because if you train somebody, say for example, a BPO operation, certification, they're better off getting a better paying job being a BPO operations manager in Kenya than going into the US or into Canada or even India, because they are much, much higher level of skills specific to that, that role. So when we talk about, brain drain specific to the outsourcing, industry, it isn't that much of a problem. The problem we have.
That's interesting. I think there's some give and take, because you've got the former owner of Kincall, who was very successful in the IT space in Denver, Colorado. Then he moved back to Nairobi and brought his skill set with him. You have people like you who got went to college in Dallas, Fort Worth, and you came back. But on the other hand, you got people like my manager, where I'm a consultant in Doha, Qatar, where she has a master's degree. She went from Kenya to the UK, got her master's degree and her undergraduate degree, and really rose up the ranks in customer experience in the UK. And now she's a very senior manager in customer experience here in Qatar. So I see both sides of it. I see some give and take, people taking their skill sets they got in Kenya elsewhere, and then I see other people coming back like yourself. I did hear one thing that was interesting from you. You talked about certification and certifying sensors. I'm probably going to upset you with this one, but I had a really good conversation in a podcast yesterday with Alton Martin, the founder of COPC, who I used to go around the world with to do certifications, first COPC, then SPOT. So we used to certify centers together. Well, he told me yesterday, and this is a controversy. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched that podcast, I hope that you do. You just click on the podcast link and you'll find it here. But Alton said that individual certification is much more important than site certifications. He doesn't see a value in site certifications anymore. He thinks things like P&P are much more important in developing the skill set of the practitioners, either in management or even at the agent level, but not a site, because it just becomes unwieldy, because you've got sites that manage tier 3 technical support, full stack development, programming, customer service, Internet of Things. So you've got so many different domains within a center or within an outsourcer that to come up with a certification for that center may not make sense anymore. So if you haven't watched that podcast, Jeremiah, please watch it. I was a little surprised when he told me that, but it made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's absolutely right. And you are absolutely right as well. Center certification or accreditation is a very tricky affair, just for the reasons you mentioned. And it can be valuable for a single client who wants to do, sales, for them to want you to have credit card, certifications and stuff like that.
PCMI, yeah, sure.
Yes, exactly. But then it would not be, realistic for a client that wants to do back office services for them. So,
right.
Center certification, if you were to have, certifications for all types of services in the outsource environment, I think you'd be looking at hundreds or thousands of certifications. But then agent or workforce level certifications are more appealing, because it speaks directly to what an individual can do. What type of or quality of service do you expect out of a specific individual or a group of individuals? So to that extent, he's absolutely right. And most of the certifications, that's why you don't have COPC very dominant in this region, but you have the likes of BCI being very relevant in this region, because they are agent, or it's not agent, they are staff level certification and accreditation programs.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. So talking about the level of maturity within the BPO space, where would you rank Kenya? I know you're talking about you want to put them all in a basket and have one association, but if you had to categorize top to bottom, who's number 1 in East Africa? Who's number 2? Who's number 3, 4, and 5, and why?
Kenya would rank 1, Uganda would be 2, Rwanda would be 3, and this is the why. Kenya is 1.
Because you're a homer.
Yes, that is one. That is one issue. But then that is neither here nor there. But let me give you the
I'm kidding.
actual technical reasons why that. One,
Sure.
Kenya's maturity in this space. Kenya is the trailblazer in outsourcing in this region. We started it off before everyone else in the region thought about it. So in terms of the exposure to this environment, Kenya has been around longer. 1, 2, Kenya's it goes back to skills and education and all. We have the best of the best in this region. 2, 3, technology infrastructure, technology-wise, again, we are leading in this region. 3, facility, or let's say real estate-wise, Kenya has some of the best real estates in this region. So what you'd be looking at as a tier 1 facility, or I'm talking about buildings and everything like that now, that would be a tier 1 facility or class A facility in, say, for example, Austin, would equally be a level 1 or tier 1 facility in Nairobi as well. So when buyers look for those types of requirements, they can get it here in Kenya. 4, the level of public sector support for this particular space in Kenya is immense. 5, the private sector has put themselves together in a way that everything that is happening in the sector is running in tandem. Everyone knows who is doing what, when, where, with who, and how. So the private sector is more organized than most of these other regions. And those are some of the reasons why Kenya is more appealing than the other regions. So all of those factors, if you put them all and put them against these other countries, you'll find that there are gaps or lapses or disconnects in some area worse than Kenya is, and that is why Kenya is the best. Uganda comes up very close to Kenya, because again, and this is something that I've experienced and I'm still experiencing it now to date, Uganda tries to borrow a lot from what Kenya does. So they're right a step behind Kenya. So if we do something and it works, they replicate. If we do something and it fails, they stay away from it. So they're right behind, learning from us. And that's why they're a very close second to Kenya. Rwanda, on the other hand, is also doing almost the same thing. But the biggest challenge for Rwanda is, availability of workforce because of its size and the size of the market, and a lot of Kenya and Rwanda youths have migrated out of their country into most of these, East African countries. So labor is a challenge for Rwanda. And then also, just by the mere size of the population, the market is very, very small, so they can only absorb so much incoming, work from the global market.
Okay, I see you definitely omitted Mauritius, so you're not including them in the East Africa bucket, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Do you want to comment a little bit about Mauritius, or is that another conversation?
We can make that another conversation for another day.
Yeah, because they're certainly tier 1. Okay. And they've also been a leader in terms of having the fiber optic landing point. I think they predated Kenya by 10 years. So they've been at it a long time. But yeah, I'd have to agree with you in everything you just said. So if I were to have a Gantt chart to say Kenya is tier 2 and they're preset to become tier 1, Uganda, how many months or years behind Kenya is Uganda?
A
year behind?
Yeah, about 5 years. About 5 years there.
Oh, wow, 5 years. Wow, so
yes.
You're saying it'd take about 5 years for Kampala to catch up to Nairobi, I guess. And how about Rwanda? How many years behind is Rwanda from Kenya in terms of development, capacity building?
Rwanda would be probably about 10, 12 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a real serious gap right there. So it sounds like you're talking about East Africa, but the real launching pad, if you're going to put your flagpole in East Africa, right now on the continent at least, would be Nairobi.
Yes.
Okay, and then you'd have some satellite offices maybe in Uganda and Rwanda, and perhaps for languages at a higher price point, you'd maybe look at Mauritius.
Absolutely. And sorry, and then also one of the other things, and everything that I'm saying, I have pointers to this. If you look at Kenya over the last 5 years, there is about 7 global BPO operators that have come in and set up their facilities in Kenya, including Majora, including CCI and the rest. Yeah. And there's a very good reason why they're here and not Kampala and not Kigali. Yeah. So those just goes to show why, Kenya is on the lead. But the idea is that we don't want Kenya to run alone, because if Kenya goes it alone the whole way, it's going to reach a time when Kenya will be too small. the market will turn out to be too small, and we'll only have more power if we consolidate these other countries, which gives us about almost 120 million, population, market to population. So that is why we are very interested. We are very keen on, yes, as much as Kenya might be leading the way, we'd like to bring these other countries along with us, so that eventually, as the whole region matures, then you can be able to capture a wider and a more varied, market, as opposed to if you went it all alone.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, good stuff. I see that we're coming to the end of our podcast for today. Is there anything that we missed today that you want to cover before we sign out of this podcast?
Well, I'd just like to say that our company, Collins Consulting International, we're on the ground. For all of our visitors, listeners and viewers, those who are interested in exploring the East African, outsourcing space, you can get in touch. We'll hold your hand. We'll do the groundwork for you, so that your outsourcing endeavor becomes a success. That is all I can say, and we hope that we'll be keeping you posted on the trends and talk about what we project this market to be in the future.
Fantastic. I'd like to do some podcasts with maybe some of the centers that you'd want to bring on board with you. So maybe we could have a three-party or four-party podcast on East Africa on our next visit. How's that sound?
That sounds tremendous. That sounds awesome. We'll work on it.
Okay.
We'll work on it. Yeah.
All
I'll
right.
get one or two, and then you can talk about.
I think our viewers would like that.
Yes.
Well, thank you for taking the time again today, Jeremiah, and we'll certainly put your demographic details again in the liner notes. And you make it a great day today.
Thank you, Russ, and you have a lovely Saturday afternoon too.
Okay. So long.
All right. Bye.